you guys. We are in South Berwick, Maine today. It is an absolutely glorious day. We are at the Hamilton House, and I wanted to do a follow-up to my Saugus Iron Works Scottish prisoners video. You might remember that 150 prisoners were taken after the Battle of Dunbar in Scotland in 1650, and a bunch of them were taken to the Saugus Iron Works. Some were sadly sold to individuals and families, and about 25 were brought here to South Berwick to work in a mill that is quite crusty, dusty, moldy, and nasty looking. We drove by it. There's really no place to pull off, no signage, no plaque, no nothing. So we decided to come here to Hamilton House, and it's a great story segue into something else I want to talk to you about, and that is the American dream. To recap on the events surrounding the Battle of Dunbar, in 1649, Charles I was executed, and in 1650, Oliver Cromwell marched with an army of about 16,000 to Scotland, and could you believe the nerve? He was trying to take control of Edinburgh and Edinburgh Castle, which, no, just no. But his army got close. They actually weren't able to capture Edinburgh at that time. Then an army of about 22,000 Scots, led by David Leslie, pushed Cromwell's much smaller force back. And on September 3rd, a huge battle. 3,000 Scots killed, 10,000 captured. Cromwell eventually gets his way, takes over Edinburgh, and rules for about 5 years. Meanwhile, 150 captured Scots are out and boarding a ship called the Unity, which, how ironic, super windy. So they were captured and they were brought on a ship called the Unity, and they were taken to Boston, where they were then let off and divided up like cattle. It's definitely finally spring. Look at the flowers. What a pretty day. This beautiful house. Divided up, and some are sent to Saugus Iron Works, where we went before, and I will put the link below. So if you didn't watch that, you'll know more of what I'm talking about. Some were sold to the locals, like I said, pretty much had to work as house slaves. And 25 were sent here to Berwick to work in the crusty old mill. To this day, you know, Maine and New Hampshire have a really large, well, and Massachusetts, but really Maine and New Hampshire have a very large Scottish population. And you have to think that some of that is descendants of some of the folks that were captured, eventually won their freedom after working in really hard conditions. These people had to toil and work for, like, you know, most of the day, sun up to sundown, in very difficult conditions. Under duress, really. It wasn't their choice to come here. I said this before, I'll say it again, you know, if you were taken from your homeland, never to return, against your will, and you were captured, to me, that is the same thing as slavery. And that's essentially what they were. Brought to a country, you know, never seeing their homeland again. And I can't imagine, I mean, we're not very far from the coast. When they looked upon the Atlantic Ocean and knew that was the same Atlantic as, you know, the Scottish coast, what emotion that must have drummed up at some point, you know, it's just hard to think about. Now, of course, they ended up staying here and building lives, and that's where the American dream comes in. And this is a story that no matter what your heritage or nationality background is, you can relate to if you're an American, especially if you're an American who's been here for any length of time. So you had a couple prominent families notable amongst the prisoners that were brought here. There was a couple Grant brothers, which do not mess with Clan Grant, and a lot of other Scottish names. I think there were some Browns and some Campbells. If any of you have relatives or a descendant of folks that were brought here, let me know. I really appreciate when you guys do that. And if my videos are able to bring you some clarity and some kind of connection, man, I'm telling you, that's what this is all about. And you have no idea what it means to me. So I always appreciate getting that kind of feedback. Another such person that was brought here was one David Hamilton. And David Hamilton was, you know, just part of the group taken after the Battle of Dunbar and forced to work in the mill down the road But you see this place here? This is now known as the Hamilton House. So fast forward, the Battle of Dunbar, 1650. Within a handful of years, people well settled into their life of servitude here against their will. And then you're going to go 100 years in the future. They've got their freedom, they're business owners, and these folks were a descendant of that David Hamilton. So out of toil and pain, the mighty oak tree, lies the American story. And it's a common thread that a lot of us can share in a lot of different ways, certainly with Scottish people, but, with a lot of people groups. And it's really what America's always been about. These people came against their will, but obviously future generations would prosper. This is a very beautiful example of a Georgian home. And wait till you see this awesome view here. And we are right on the New Hampshire border. Getting here, the drive was awesome. It was like all backcountry roads from our house, and then eventually you get to Dover, New Hampshire, and go through like Rollinsford, and you wind up in South Berwick, Maine. Look at this. I love how symmetrical the home is, how very Georgian of them. But look at this front or back patio. Yeah, this is the back, but this view, the gorgeousness of the day helps. And then there are some awesome gardens over here as well. Biting flies are out, so I'm not going to spend too much time out here. And this is probably going to be a quick video. I just really wanted to connect the dots for you guys and make sure that those of you whose ancestors were sent here rather than Saugus got the recognition, because I think that is really important. It is the Salmon Falls River. This place was built in 1787, by the way. Look how nice. The descendant Jonathan Hamilton that bought the land and had this place built. Now it is open seasonally. Look how it's got the interior shutters. So we'll have to come back and tour the inside of this place at some point. And Jonathan Hamilton, he was a privateer during the Revolutionary War, so an entrepreneur, to say the least. Sometimes that American ingenuity kicks in and you take advantage of the situation. And that's what he did. But, it's a great payback. If your people have been wronged, to live a good, successful life, have future generations prosper, and leave an imprint. In 1815, the house changed hands and went on to a family called the Goodwins, who took nice care of it. And then in 1898, a famous local author, Sarah Orrin Jewett, had her friend buy the place, and their last name was Tyson. So it was then owned by the Tyson. It has since become a historic site. And there are so many flies. It's crazy too to think that, after everything Oliver Cromwell did, his reign of weirdness only lasted like 5 years. It's interesting how someone could win like a whirlwind, rock everybody's world, and then just be in and out, One last look. It's so fun to think about early America. These people didn't receive charity help. They weren't on welfare. There's no food stamps. No one feels sorry for you. It was wilderness out here. And generations had to figure out how to carve a life out for themselves. Looks like the descendants carved a pretty good one, because that house is gorgeous. I'm sure that not every descendant had the same story, of course. They didn't all live here, and there's going to be, you know, a lot of local people with the name Hamilton that have all different types of stories. You know, it's what you do with the situation and what you make of your own future generations. You can break those generational curses. You can do better for yourself and your family no matter what your background is. God has a call in everybody's life, and it's what you do with it. And I think that is part of the great American story. Your story can be great, it can be meh, it can be ordinary, but everyone has a story. And as I always say, the past is very much alive and worthy of being explored. Attempt to show you guys the crusty, dusty, moldy, nasty mill. Because I really do want you to see it, see where it all went down. So it may just be filming from the car, but we'll see what we can do. Hopefully you guys can see up there, there's a family plot cemetery on the Hamilton property. There's little cemeteries like this everywhere around New England. It's funny because there's some like on the side of the freeway. Okay, here it comes. You see that? That's it. And there's like no parking, private property signs. There's nowhere to park. I tried before. And I have a feeling somebody may come out with a shotgun, which I love you guys, but I'm not willing to do that. And I have no idea where I am, but I think I'm supposed to turn right. Your guess is as good as mine. All right, we're back on the New Hampshire side. That is Maine right there. Now, think about this. The mill in South Berwick was 60 miles from Saugus. So these people were being moved pillar to post, taken from their homeland and moved all over. They must have been so confused, and it must have been a really scary time. And though comparatively speaking, it might seem like a low number of people forcibly brought to the colonies, when you compare it to other groups that were forced to come, it's still a story and one worth being told, and it's an interesting one. One I think a lot of people outside of New England don't necessarily know about. It's one that certainly faces me, and one that I can draw inspiration from. You know, everybody's got a story and a past, and if that's where your roots lie, that's where your roots lie, and you're going to want to honor it. And I think that all of the American stories are worth honoring. I hope that you all are having a fantastic week. It is beautiful here. I hope that it's beautiful no matter where you are, and that everybody is doing well. I am that history chick, and like Patrick Henry, I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. The past, real, alive, worthy of exploration, and we've got a lot of fun things coming up, so we will see you soon. Hit that like button, share away, subscribing always appreciated, and remember, I'm also on Instagram at @that_historychick, on Facebook at @thathistorychick, and right here with adventures coming at you more and more often as it seems. So we will see you soon. Take care, bye. All I want is a lock somewhere over by the nice warm breezy air. I don't even need a chair, just a lock of wood, and it'd be lovely. People were looking at me when I was singing like I was crazy, by the way.